You're listening to the Outside the Box podcast.
With Mike, Gwen, Alex, and Lee from Outside the Box Associates.
Every month, your host will have a real world discussion about rights and topics that many of us take for granted.
From a different perspective, the lens of disability advocacy.
It may look a little different,
but we live, we laugh, and we love just like everyone else.
And we share the same rights as everybody else.
Join us as we explore the practical aspects of these rights.
It may just change your perspective.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to our podcast. I'm Alex Shesko.
I'm Mike Rogers.
My name is Lee Hartley.
And today we're going to be talking about a rather spiritual topic. Specifically, the question we're exploring today is, what is it? Rather, why do we feel that people with disabilities exist, and what is their purpose as far as, if they believe in a higher power, and why did that higher power put us in this lifetime as the way we are?
Oh.
So when I've thought about this a lot through my life, because when I was younger, I noticed the disparity between people with disabilities and those that didn't identify as people with disabilities. And I'm like, well, why is that? I thought something was not right about that, because I always saw things from a very young age as people are people. And I thought that isolation or discrimination was wrong. So one of the things that I've always said is, I think, disability happens, first of all, many times because of things that happen. Like in my case, I had CP, so I probably got lack of oxygen. But from a greater standpoint, why was that allowed to happen? I think in my case, because the greater power, in my case, God, knew that I would be a very vocal, outspoken person, and said, well, hey, he's going to have the disability. This happened. So what can he do to further the interaction and understanding of people, when you have people from different backgrounds? I think it's ultimately so that we all learn that however different we are, we're not that different. That's been my theory about it.
I would agree with that. I would definitely say that. I feel that in many ways, this kind of sounds very simplistic, but I feel like in my case, I believe Spirit kind of asks a fundamental question of all of us, since that basically says, who are you? Given your circumstances, given who you are and the circumstances around your life, how do you want to play your life? In my case, it's, who is Alex Shesko? In Mike's case, it's, who is Mike Rogers? In Lee's case, it's who is Lee Hartley. So in every case, the cool thing about that question is that you don't know the answer until the very end. You don't know who you really are until your entire life plays out. So what Spirit does, it says, okay, Alex, go play, go find out who you are by virtue of your circumstances in this lifetime. So I think that's really interesting. But in the more smaller aspect of, as to why we have disabilities, I do believe you're right. I believe that, a lot of people see us as we're all different. And the beautiful part of that is having the ability to recognize that just because we're different doesn't mean that we're any less unable or special or anything like that. It just means that we're all seeing the same beautiful world in a variety of ways, and experiencing the world in a variety of ways, individually and collectively. So that's really, really cool. And
right.
by virtue of our disabilities, we all experience the world a little differently. And that's
Right.
not only true of people with disabilities, but everybody literally on this planet is experiencing the world differently because
Right,
of
we don't all think the same thing or act the same way. I mean, you and I technically have the same disability, Alex, and
yep.
we're two totally different people. Even our disability is different than
Yep.
the other person.
Uh
What do you think, Lee? What are your thoughts on some
yeah,
of this?
Some disabilities are hidden.
Yeah,
that's true.
yeah. Some disabilities people don't know about. People experience that within themselves.
Yep.
And that in itself is very interesting, you know, because we people expect that, oh, you see disability all the time. That's why people get told, oh, but you don't look disabled. Well, what does disability look like?
Exactly. Exactly.
And you know, I think a lot of times people are, let's face it, we as human beings can be very shallow sometimes.
Hmm.
And I think the difference of disability gets people to think. It gets people to see something that's different than them or experience something different than them, and then ask questions that they may not ask, you know,
Yeah.
in other ways.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I would also say too that, not to aggrandize people with disabilities at all, because that's not what I want to do. But I would say that by virtue of having people with disabilities on this planet, no matter what the disability is, it allows people the ability to practice compassion, not only towards people with disabilities, but it also helps them develop understanding and awareness that, there are other beings on this planet that move and operate differently than other people, um, on this planet, which is really, really cool. So in that way, it's sort of an expansion of awareness by virtue of being a person with a disability, regardless of what the disability is. So that's really, really neat.
And I think sometimes it also allows us as people with disabilities to gain some fortitude, because you know, to understand that no matter how much we think people should understand, they don't always understand. And to have that patience
Yeah.
that really is beyond what most people will be patient about,
Yep.
is that's been my experience. I've had to be patient with things that are incredibly annoying and incredibly difficult to deal with, that other people even go, how can you deal with that? Well, it's because my life has taught me some lessons.
Yeah. And the one thing that I notice a lot, and forgive me, I feel like I'm doing a lot of talking, but one of the things I would say is that, um, you know, one thing I've experienced throughout my life is that the universe works in a very interesting pattern, so that things tend to repeat over and over and over again. And the cool thing about that is that recognizing that pattern, you can see kind of the more nuanced uh, things that are out there that exist, as far as humanity's ability to have compassion, humanity's ability to care, humanity's ability to overcome, all of those things. Again, they're not just strictly for people with disabilities, but by virtue of having people with disabilities, it kind of accentuates that point even further. So I think
Yeah,
that's really, really neat.
yeah. I have another point, but I want to go to Lee. Lee,
Yeah,
what are your additional thoughts?
I am a pantheist.
you're an atheist. Yeah. So one of the reasons as to why we're asking this question
No,
too is,
A pantheist.
oh, pantheist. I'm sorry.
Is that what you said? Is a pantheist.
I'm sorry. I thought you said atheist.
oh,
My
So
bad.
so
A
so you
pantheist.
feel so you feel that there can be many representations of a god figure,
Or
and
divine. Yeah.
different uh, you know, aspects of that can come through in your
yes.
beliefs.
Very
Yeah.
cool. So can I ask what aspects do you believe in? Do you follow? Do you then not the, the word isn't coming to me. But what names do you give your divinities, if you don't mind me asking? You don't have to write them all, just give me like a couple so I can have a general idea.
The Big Bang.
The Big Bang.
The
Okay.
Big Bang. Okay, so you kind of align that with some science and some reason, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
And you know that's very interesting, Lee, because what I was going to say is you were talking about patterns, Alex, and we know in neuroscience that what do they say, if something's repeated like 6 times or something, you'll remember it.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe going through some of these things over and over and people seeing that, and we're an example of perseverance, an example of, you know we we teach you how to go through some things that the average person may not look at or may shy away from.
I agree. Um, in many ways too, I would say that my disability kind of awoken me to other concepts in a way, because it allowed me to reflect a bit more upon my own existence and things like that. Because as a person with a disability who physically, couldn't do sports in the way that I wanted to, or do a lot of physical activity, I spent a lot more time asking questions like why? Why do we exist the way we do?
Yeah,
Where do we
yeah,
come from? Why does this matter? And all of that. And by virtue of that alone, it allowed me to go farther inward versus outward. Um,
sure,
and so
sure,
that was a gift in
and
itself.
sure, and I come from a Christian perspective, and one of the big questions is, why is there struggle? Why does suffering exist? If there's a God, why does all this happen? And what I've come to know is, like I I gotta get back into it, but I used to be a gym person, and I always like the analogy of, to build muscle, the muscle has to tear first, because then it heals, and
Yep.
then it builds muscle.
Yep.
So we have to go through these things to be enlightened, to find out why, like, we're here, why other people are here, what existence is all about. Are we going to know everything about that? No, but to put it simply, I don't think God wants us to remain spiritually dumb. So he allows us some exercises to prime our pump a little bit.
For sure, for sure. And something I've heard before, and it's very true. Uh, Pain is often the best teacher for many people. And not to say that we have more pain than most, because that's not the case at all. I think we all have equal amounts of pain in different ways and different measures, as people. However, one of the really cool things is, by virtue of our various forms of suffering, we learn about how to care for each other, which is really important as well. Um,
Yeah, that it's not just about the material. In our society these days, the material has become almost like godlike, you
yeah,
know.
for sure, for sure. Uh, but yeah, I mean, but on the other note, on the other hand of spirituality and religion, there are moments where we all can discuss, moments where people have prayed over us and that kind of thing. And that sort of, I wouldn't call it odd behavior, because it's meant to be helpful, but it sometimes can be rather irritating. Lee, I know you have a specific experience that you'd like to discuss in that manner of things. Would you like to share that?
I recall going to the McKinley Mall one day and I was stopped by a religious zealot to be prayed over and then fully get up out of my wheelchair and walk. The very
And
next week, I was stopped by the same zealot and she mumbled, "It should have worked by now," so I just continued driving on.
I love that.
You know, I know, I think, but all of us have been through that similar experience, and
Mhm.
it's scientifically proven that miracles, if you want to say, can happen. Well,
Mhm.
whatever your beliefs are, um, people have been healed of things that they're not supposed to be healed from. They should have died
Mhm.
from their disease, but no, nowhere in any spiritual writing that I've ever read says that everybody with challenges is going to miraculously be healed.
Yep.
I believe that that is above my pay grade, let's say, to know everything about. And I don't feel I need to be healed. I don't need to, I mean, I could use some, some upgrades a little bit, but, but I don't, but I don't need to be healed. Nothing is wrong with me.
Right. Right.
I think healings have a purpose greater than people know, and they're only reserved for certain situations, I think.
Yep. I've also had people pray over me and things like that. And sometimes it's okay and sometimes it's kind of intrusive. But in many cases I allow people to do that because I want them to feel like they can practice their belief, whatever it may be, even if it may not work. At least for them, they feel like they did a good thing. So I'm happy to do that for them. However, if that's only if I have the time and the energy to provide to that person. Otherwise, I have to walk on and and let them kind of not do their service in that way.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I think it's okay to let people do things, but if it gets to the point where where I will sometimes let them do that, but I will say, but you might think that I need to be healed, but I think I'm supposed to be this way for the greater purpose.
I agree.
And although I respect what you're doing, and I totally believe that that's possible,
Yep.
um, I what was I gonna say? How can I put this? I don't think that it's for me because my purpose is not that.
Right. I will also say that in regards to what you were saying earlier, Mike, about people people undergoing miracles and things like that. I will say there have been many studies done in regards to both prayer and meditation that when large groups of people got together to pray or meditate, they did studies where crime actually went down in cities and people actually healed faster and things like that. So I do believe there is something to the idea of positive intention and praying for someone, healing someone, that kind of thing. I do believe there is energy behind it, but I believe it takes a lot more than just one person to some degree, or it takes a collective of sorts. um
I agree. I think that's why in most belief systems there's gatherings.
yeah,
But I also do believe that I think sometimes healing is not for the person that's healed, but
absolutely.
for other people to see that there's something beyond what they know. I think it has a way greater purpose than just Joe Schmo dropping his cane.
Right, right.
You
i
know.
think i think that go ahead, Lee.
Pantheism is a belief that God is the universe.
Okay. So so wait, okay, so how is pantheism different from monotheism? Because it seems kind of similar. So wait, so let me clarify. So in pantheism, God is reflected as everything, correct?
Yes,
Okay. So if that is the case, then how is that different from the Catholic or Christian version of God?
and
Because isn't God supposed to be everything in Catholicism anyway? Or am I misinterpreting
things,
that?
all,
I believe. Correct
and
me if
means
I'm.
all gods.
Oh God,
Okay,
there's a reflection of God in every belief,
I got you. Okay,
something
got
like
you.
that.
I
Yeah.
got you. Okay, all right, that makes sense. Okay, very cool. All right. I will say, so Mike mentioned before that you said that you're a practicing Catholic, yes?
Well, I could be better practicing than I am. I'll just say that.
Okay.
I still have the core beliefs, but I could be better practicing than I am.
Okay. That's
But
cool. No, I'm just asking for the sake of so we can
yes,
explain to our
yes,
listeners.
yes. That is
So
my that's my core belief. Yes.
okay. So my belief, I'm spiritual, so that means that I study a lot of variations of religion and belief systems and kind of feel through what's right for me and practice what's right for me. It doesn't really matter based on a religion. It's more based upon what I feel is right for myself and my life and my practice. So I have a lot of variation as far as what my beliefs are. However, my understanding of the universe as a whole is that the universe itself is divine, and we as human beings are divine. We're just a microcosm of the macrocosm. So and vice versa.
I concur.
Yeah. So Lee and I are of similar minds in that way. Um, but the cool thing too, I will say in my journey through life is that I grew up in a very Catholic household. My grandma used to take me to church every day, when I was little, and or not every day, every week rather, every weekend. Um, and we used to go to church and pray and do all these things and yada yada yada. And the funny thing about it is, growing up as a kid with my experiences the way they were, I actually started out like hating God, basically saying, why did you put me here? What was the purpose? Like, why would you do this to me? Why would you cause me to go through all this suffering, um, in order to, uh, in order to just live this life that doesn't make any sense? And I'm not a big believer in suicide or anything like that, so I wasn't going to like commit suicide to leave early. You know what I mean? But um, but as I got older and started to understand more about life and what life was, I realized something that honestly, just by the virtue of living our lives, we make a difference in this world, not just by the people we affect, in our immediate circle, our friends, our family, but the world at large, because the world at large sees us as people going through our lives. And it's not about pity as much as it is about allowing people to realize that just because you're different doesn't mean that you have to struggle or go against the odds. In many ways, it's by virtue of us living our lives as we are, we give people strength, and that's a really beautiful thing too. So
I think so too. I think a lot of times people get it wrong when they say, "Oh, you were put on here for the purpose, yeah,
yeah,
and all that stuff." No, we're here to show you how to get through adversity. Right?
absolutely.
That has always been my idea, and I think that's why not proselytizing anybody here, but I think that's why I've I've been able to stay with the Christian idea because you know the figure of Jesus. You see a man who was well liked, and then he was crushed by the Roman Empire, basically
Hmm.
left there to be nailed to a piece of wood,
Hmm.
and basically naked because they didn't put clothes on you when you were crucified.
Nope.
That's just on a cross thing to make it
Right.
look good, so people don't go, "Oh my gosh." Um, but
Right.
but, but it is true, right?
Yep.
So, but it did, and regardless of belief, I mean Christianity in its entirety, you're believing in a person that was outcast, misunderstood,
Hmm.
um, you know, left there to die. And I sometimes feel like that's what they do to people with disabilities in a
Societal
spiritual,
sense.
sociological kind of way.
Yeah.
And it's like, it kind of gives me strength to say, hey, I can go through this stuff, but I can still show you we can do it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Leeds, what thoughts did you have, if any, on this matter?
Jesus was well hung.
Oh my God.
Was well hung. Well, well, we don't know that.
That's what editing was for. That's what editing was
Yes,
for, guys.
we don't know that, sir. But this has been a very good conversation, and I think it'll help a lot of people.
Right.
And
I agree.
and we want to thank you for coming on today, as always, and keep joining us at outside the box for our podcast
Yep.
and everything else.
Yep.
If you go to ostbwny.com, you can listen to all our previous podcasts and see what we're doing.
Speaking of things that we are doing, we are having a walk in Rhinestone Woods in September. So please join us for that. It is, what's the date again, Mike? September.
It is September 23rd
There we go. I knew it was
from 10 a.m. to 12
There
at
you go.
Rhinestone Woods, and it's on our event page on our website.
Yes.
So again, that's ostbwny.com,
yes.
and just go to the events page. Let us know by emailing us
Yep.
at our email address. You'll see everything listed there.
Yep.
Let us know you're coming, and it's totally free, and it's open and inclusive to everybody.
Yes, we'd love to have you there. So please join us.
Yes.
With that, would you guys have any final words you'd like to say?
No.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much. I appreciate you guys being here. Thank you all for listening. Have a wonderful, wonderful evening, and we'll be hearing you again soon.
All right, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.
You've been listening to the Right of the Month podcast with Mike, Alex, and Gwen from Outside the Box Associates. The Right of the Month podcast airs every Thursday and Saturday evening at 8 p.m. Eastern here on Heartability Radio. Listen on Live 365 or www.heartabilityradio.com. We'll see you next time.